This time I want to tell you about one of the most oversold parts on the planet, and that's the lowly oxygen sensor. You see, these things do go bad sometimes, but it's estimated that only like 2 or 3% of all of them that are replaced are actually necessary. Now, how can that actually happen? Well, the reality of this is that people don't understand check engine lights and trouble codes. Now, the check engine light comes on your car. What are you going to do? Well, maybe you have your own code reader, like these little handheld units like this. They start at about $39 and then go on up into the professional stuff that is several $1,000s. Well, these small ones, primarily what they do is read codes. Well, codes, unfortunately, are not what you might think they are. You see, a code gives you a description. It tells you, in other words, if we have an oxygen sensor code, it mentions the oxygen sensor, but that doesn't mean that it is the oxygen sensor that's causing the problem. See, all a code does is tell you what test to perform. Now let's say we have a misfire code, a P0300. That's a random misfire code. Now that would have to be tested using test sequence P0300. For each one of these codes, there's a test sequence that goes through the steps of elimination for each one of the things that can cause the code. In the case of the oxygen sensor, you could get an oxygen sensor code from a vacuum leak, from a leaking fuel injector, from low fuel pressure, a mass airflow sensor, any of a dozen different things on the car. Well, the oxygen sensor test that has the same number as the code, you go through that and it, through a process of elimination, will lead you to the real cause, and you won't be buying an unnecessary oxygen sensor. Now, back in the day when oxygen sensors were $39, that wasn't a great big deal. But today, some of these are several $100s. Had a Jaguar come in the shop not too long ago with almost $3,000 worth of oxygen sensors and labor and testing and all of that on it. And all it was a broken vacuum hose. So you want to do this properly. Remember that the code doesn't tell you what to replace, it tells you what test to perform. And to get that test, you'd need either a service manual or you would need a subscription to AllData. Well, once you have that, then you perform the tests and you will find the real answer. But see, one thing that happens here is that, technicians may tell you, the ones that really don't understand computers, they may tell you, well, I turned off your check engine light and everything's going to be fine. Well, there are a couple of things with check engine lights. Number one, there are sub-programs in a computer on a car. These sub-programs are called monitors. They monitor the main programs. And they have two positions, on and off. So before a check engine light can come back on, all of the monitors have to be what's called set and ready. In other words, they have to be turned on. Well, when that technician disconnected the battery to clear the codes and turn off the check engine light, what actually happened was all of the monitors were turned off. Now, it takes sometimes just a day, other times it may take weeks or months before all of the driving conditions are met to turn those monitors back on. So you go in, you pay your money, you buy the part that they recommend and so on. They erase the monitors, you go out the door, you're happy as all get out because your check engine light is gone, and lo and behold, a few days or a few weeks later, back on comes the check engine light. Now you go back to the shop, you say, hey, you just fixed the car. Technician says, oh, let me check it. We'll see what's going on. And they check it. Then they tell you, oh yeah, well, we've got another problem. And they sell you something else. and the same thing happens again. And eventually, well, maybe they get it right, or maybe you go to a different shop where they do the proper testing. So it's really pretty simple. Make sure that you read the code, perform the test with the same number as the code, and then get the repair based on the results of that test, not the code itself. And if you'd like more information, drop me a line at radio@goss-garage.com.